Gary Habermas is with us, Liberty University apologetics and philosophy professor. Gary, welcome to the program.
Glad to be with you on such a wonderful day that deserves some celebration, as you've already noted.
Yeah, I guess today does as well because this is the atonement, but Sunday is the real celebratory day. I don't think we take enough time on Good Friday to really understand what this man went through.
Yeah, absolutely. He was, the movie The Passion, it was called all kinds of things by people who didn't like it. Pornographic violence was one of the phrases I remember. Yeah. But there is a reference in ancient history to people being beaten for punishments. And the ancient source says that they whipped the men until their organs fell out. And that even surpasses the Passion.
Jeez.
But all I'm saying is that was only the prequel to the crucifixion. So this is a very serious event, and what we portray is not overdone.
And when they crucified people, they weren't on big tall crosses like we see. They were street level and almost eye level, so people coming into the town would know this is what happens to people if you do these things, right?
Correct, because the men were talking to each other, and if you remember the scene at the end where Jesus is pierced with the spear, now he's already dead, and by the way, I'll just add, we have a Roman reference that says the same thing, that the centurion could allow the family to take the dead body of the crucified person. When they were taken down, they were dead, and they were given one last blow. And the Latin word that's used means, it's a military term for using an axe, a spear, or a sword. But anyway, my point is, if you're low enough that a person could stab you with a Roman short spear, yes, you're closer to the ground than a lot of the depictions.
So I thought that it was unusual to take the body and bury it. Because from what I learned about crucifixion, part of it was the dogs would come and eat some of the flesh, and it just made it more grisly for visitors. Hey, come to our town. Don't end up like this.
Yeah, and birds too. But of course, your point about the dogs, that shows you how much closer they are to the ground.
Correct.
By the way, Romans often did leave victims on the cross. Thousands were crucified outside Jerusalem in the Jewish War, 66 to 70 A.D. However, Josephus, the Jewish historian, tells us that Jews had such respect for bodies that even crucifixion victims, criminals if they were, even criminals' bodies were taken down and buried. So Jewish tradition is an exception to the stain on the cross.
Do you have any idea when they started crucifixion? How it started, when it started?
It goes way back, before the Romans, back to the Assyrians, and even before that, and it was practiced around the eastern end of the Mediterranean, but all the way up in Italy. You remember the story of Spartacus and the slaves, and crucifying the people down the Appian Way near Rome. And they were talking about lighting people on fire, and being, in particular, Nero, lighting them to be torches in the night. So that's just kind of how it's not enough to be beaten up. It's not enough to be hung and then burned. So I can't think of a worse way to die.
Is there anything in particular that you read in the scriptures about this day that really you can really truly show the evidence in the scriptures and go, that we know is absolutely true because of X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, there's actually a couple. I co-authored an article 2021, 3 years ago, with two other people, one a neurologist, MD, PhD, and another researcher. And what we did was we didn't try to prove how Jesus died. We simply did a head count of medical views. And by far the most common view, double all the other views put together, was that in crucifixion, the victims asphyxiate. And what happens is when you stretch out in that condition, and by the way, the closer your hands are to your head, the closer your arms are brought up, the faster you asphyxiate. And of course, when someone starts asphyxiating, you say, well, then how soon is it over? Well, believe it or not, medical doctors, even in Nazi Germany, in the Middle East, crucifixion is still performed. And they did experiments where they didn't hurt the person. They didn't use nails, but they did it. And the men in one experiment lost consciousness in a maximum of 12 minutes. They lost consciousness. You say, well, then how would you explain the 3 hours? It would be over fast. Well, the issue is you could push down on those nails in your feet. And when you push up, anti-gravity, but you had push up to breathe, and that allows you to unfreeze the muscles, the intercostal pectoral deltoid muscles that you work out in the gym, the ones around your lungs. You can free them, and so you can stay alive on a cross for more than a day by pushing up, sinking down, pushing up, sinking down, and that relieves the asphyxiation process.
That's really why they break their legs, right? When they want them to die, they just break their legs.
You're exactly right. And that's not the only blow. And by the way, not just in the Gospels. I just wrote a huge, almost 1,100 pages, work on crucifixion and resurrection, and I assembled a number of secular examples of people all the way up into Rome and Italy where ankles were broken. Now, there's almost no reason to break an ankle. I mean, if you're going to beat the guy up, hit him with a board, shoot him. One guy was threatened with an arrow. One guy had his skull crushed with a mallet. All kinds of things happen, but why break ankles? And, of course, it can cause shock. But it seems the main reason is to make the person go down low. We're done. We want to go back to the barracks and play cards or something. And they break the ankles, and it's over. Now it's over quickly if the person can't push up.
Right.
By the way, the other reason is the spear wound in the side, but I already said, where the Roman source says, this guy is already dead. We took him down. We laid him on the ground. His family wanted the body, and so we pierced him one more time. And you go, where? In the thigh? No, Roman soldiers didn't have anatomy lessons, but they knew where to stab a person to drop them the quickest in battle. And it makes sense they would stab them in the chest. You don't stab the skull. So where are you going to go? Probably in the heart, lung region would be normal. And that stabbing the chest of Jesus is there. So you got asphyxiation as being a possible way of dying. You've got the broken ankles that you pointed out and is backed up in archaeology, and you got the spear wound. There's three right there to make sure that Jesus was dead.
So there's also something else, the humiliation of it all. I mean, this is why I had a guest earlier this week that was saying, if this is all made up, they were really bad at making this up, because in the ancient world, the worst thing that could happen to somebody, and certainly not the Messiah, if you're telling a story and making it up, is to nail them to a tree. That is the most humiliating thing you can do. And then they mocked him. Now, I'm sure the mocking was usual, but the crown of thorns was unique to him. Yes. Right?
Yes, believed to be a criminal. He was crucified as a criminal. And I will add this. This is not always true, but crucifixion victims were often crucified nude. So if you want to add to the humiliation, and the point you're making there, that wasn't always done, but was a common way to do it.
Do we think that that's the way he was?
We
crucified?
have no idea if they.
Yeah, okay.
So there's an in-between view, and that's what's often in the paintings. They would have a garment put around their waist, almost like when you go to play football or something. You got too many clothes on. You take the sweatshirt off and you tie it around your waist. Jesus could have had one of those deals where they just tied a modesty cloth. We don't really know if that portion was done or not done, or how much he was. He wasn't clothed totally. I mean, he was either clothed with a modesty cloth or not clothed at all, most likely.
When he was crucified, we always see him up on Golgotha, and right. He's up at the top of a hill, and it's just the three of them. Is that likely to be that way, or was he with a whole bunch of other crosses all around him?
No, it seems like the three is historical. I've done so much reading on this and studied it for decades, and I don't even see. Let's put it this way: I don't think scholars even bring it up. I don't remember if I've ever seen the question of whether there were more than three crosses, and I think they generally think that, just like the gospel said, it makes sense that two guys were thieves. Jesus was in the middle, and they talked to each other. And one of them says, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus said, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." I mean, that is good historical material.